Hi, my name is Dale, and this is my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects, and I want to welcome you to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, let me go ahead and encourage you to go ahead and do that. Had many great guests over the last few months. I shouldn't say years. I think the channel's been only in existence for about a year now, a little bit over. But we've had some great guests, and today we're going to have another one. I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest on. It is Dr. Lynne Kitei, and we're so excited to have you on the podcast, Lynn. We're going to be talking about the Phoenix Lights, but we're not just going to be talking about the Phoenix Lights. There's probably some people in our audience that are, I think probably everybody's familiar with, the Phoenix Lights, but I'm not sure that everybody's familiar with you, even though you're pretty accomplished, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you never know. There may be some who don't know you. So I really want to introduce you to the audience. And so why don't you start telling us, first of all, where you live?
Okay. Actually moved to Arizona in 1980 from Philadelphia, born and raised in Philly. And ironically, my life's work has been actually donating my own time and monies to produce video and workbook curriculums on vital health issues. That's why when this topic fell in my lap, I felt obliged to do the same for this vital issue. But I actually started health reporting at NBC in Philadelphia in 1976. Jessica Savage, if you remember that name, she was big and up and coming, was really my mentor, and a syndication grew from that was showing here in Phoenix in 1980 when we moved here at CBS. And then NBC here asked me to start a healthcare program for them, Health Team 12, where I did reports on a milieu of different health subjects, and then USA Cable as well with Vicki Lawrence, a show that aired, Great American Homemaker. I was a health consultant on that. So by the mid 80s, I was pretty adept at doing everything from researching and writing and going out in the field and shooting whatever the topic would be, whether it's how to prevent a heart attack to what to do for a burn and so forth. And also seeing kids in the practice, because adolescent medicine is my specialty, that were drowning in substance abuse. And I wanted to do something really productive and impactful to wake them up to the real story about substance abuse. So I took kids that had been there, experts in the field, and then I brought in my other hat. That before I went to medical school, I was in professional musical theater since I was a child. Toured with Gordon McRae in Oklahoma and Betty Grable and Guys and Dolls. Understudied Barbara Eden in Sound of Music, and a whole host of other things. And brought in that hat by having celebrities give poignant messages to the kids. And we had Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, the original cast for Beverly Hills 90210, Paula Abdul, Sylvester Stallone, a whole host of celebrities to wake kids up to the reality. Hopefully something will touch them. And when this topic fell into my lap, and I had no interest or knowledge, and neither did my husband, who's also a physician and a healthy skeptic, one must be when you are a physician, for anybody that walks through the door, had a very close sighting to our home in 1995. Do you want me to get into that?
Well, let's go ahead and wait on that first. So you were talking about being in theater, but haven't you also been in some movies as well?
I have. I do not believe in coincidence anymore. And this is just one of the many coincidences, especially since the Phoenix Lights mass sighting, and actually the 95, with 2 years before the mass sighting. Um, call it a coincidence, but I was asked to play the part of Florence, Arizona,
Right.
in the hit 20th Century Fox Coen Brothers movie, Raising Arizona, by the Coen Brothers. That it actually opened in 87. It premiered in 87, 10 years before the mass sighting. Now, we'll get into it if we have time, but I pushed my whole professional life, whole medical career, accomplished medical career aside, for 7 years to try to find a logical source of meaning for what I had witnessed and photographed personally after thousands of people saw what I had been seeing. And it took me 7 years and a 750-page journal later and a lot of soul searching, I must say, to finally come forward. And when I did in 2004, I started doing conferences worldwide. And a couple years after I came forward, they got wind that I had done the part in Raising Arizona and announced it at the beginning. And it's an iconic film, so people probably didn't listen to what I had to say after that came out. But anyway, a fella came up to me after one of the conferences, and this was 2006 or 7, and he said, there's a reference to your character, Florence, Arizona, in the movie to UFOs. The only reference in the entire film, 10 years before the mass sighting. And I said, really? Because I hadn't watched it since the late 80s, and this was 2006 or whatever. And I went back to look. And interestingly, and by the way, the movie, for anybody that doesn't know, is a Black comedy that is pretty amazing. I mean, that the stars, the celebrities that play the parts: Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, John Goodman, Frances McDormand, Michael. I mean, you can go on and on with the cast that were just getting started. I think Nick Cage was the only one that had really done a movie previously, but Nick Cage and Holly Hunter cannot conceive. And the Arizona couple has quintuplets, and they decide to kidnap one of the quintuplets. And after they kidnap the quintuplet, one of them, they have a press conference in front of our home. And one of the reporters sticks a microphone in my husband's face and says, "There's a rumor your son was abducted by UFOs. Is there any truth to that?" And my husband says, "Oh, son, please don't print that. If his mama reads that, she'll lose all hope," which is quite opposite from my own take, which we'll get to. But it's the only reference in the entire film to UFOs 10 years before. Call it a coincidence. But what's even more profound is that the cinematographer, who was also just getting started and went on to do big with Tom Hanks and When Harry Met Sally, with Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal and How the West Was Won and Addams Family, also, drum roll, created and directed the Men in Black series, which opened in 1997. Barry Sonnenfeld. Coincidence or connection?
Well, let's step back for a second. Yeah. Let's step back for a minute. You are a doctor, and so a medical doctor, and I'm guessing that's how you were able to become a health expert as well. So where did you go to school at to get your doctorate?
Actually, undergrad at Temple University Medical School at Temple Medical School in Philadelphia, and then the Medical College of Pennsylvania for my postgraduate work.
Okay, so let's kind of put this all together. You were a doctor, you were an actress, you were a health expert. You had a very, very healthy career, but after seeing the Phoenix Lights, you decided to make a career change, and you started writing books. Let me go ahead and put this up here. And is this your first book right here, The Phoenix Lights?
Actually, that's the 4th edition. The story has continued to unfold. There's so much to this story, and there's so much mis and disinformation out there. That was one of the reasons I did come forward after 7 years of anonymity, and I mean anonymity. The only people that knew who I was or who the pictures were from were people that I went to, including the University of Arizona Optical Science Department. The head of the department really was enamored by my 35 millimeter. I'm the only one that has 35 millimeter, which is very important because the pictures are in the negative. The UAP, the UFOs are in the negative. They can't be fudged or changed or whatever. And the Brooks Institute of Photography, the head of the dean, the head of the students, the dean of students there, and sundry others, military and university optical experts were the only ones that knew, a handful, what I had, because I wanted to do my homework. I wanted to find a logical explanation for what I had witnessed in photograph, which I have yet to find 27 years later. But at any rate, when I finally...
You were skeptic. You were a skeptic before this.
A healthy skeptic. I figured there must be a logical explanation, although Although both my husband and I had a very close sighting in 95, right outside our bedroom window. You asked before, we live mountainside in Paradise Valley. We're pretty high on the mountain and a panoramic view of the city skyline. So we know what planes and helicopters and streetlights and car lights look like. In fact, if you go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, it's packed with information to explore and consider. But if you go on the photo page, there's a picture. The first picture is of the topography, which is really important
I've
because
got that. I took several. There's going to be in our slideshow. That's where I got a bunch of my pictures from, was by going to your site. And so we'll show some of
that's
that.
great.
We'll show the
That's
daytime
great.
view before you show the lights and all that. I want to go ahead and play a clip that I made off of UFO Witness with Ben Hansen, where he's talking to you about this. I'd like to go ahead and bring that in right now, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Dr. Kitei filmed what has become known as the Phoenix Lights.
I've been seeing these phenomena since March 13th, 1997.
Among ufologists, the Phoenix Lights have become one of the most iconic UFO videos ever filmed. 20,000 citizens reported seeing the strange object pictured in Dr. Kitei's video. They described it as a mile-wide, triangle-shaped craft with 6 distinct lights. It crossed roughly 300 miles of airspace, with reports coming in from Phoenix to Tucson. And one of the witnesses turned out to be a famous actor.
One of the private pilots happened to be Kurt Russell.
I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape, and I reported it. And they said, we're not painting anything. We don't show anything. I said, well, okay, I'm going to declare it's unidentified, it's flying, and it's 6 objects. That was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that.
Thousands of people? What's going on?
It could possibly be, I think, the greatest mass sighting in our country's history. And you had a front row seat.
Wow, isn't that impressive? I want to mention some other mass sightings, and then we can put this in perspective. The Stevensville, Texas mass sighting, I think it was a delta shape or triangle shaped UFO. That was in January of 2008. They said it was bigger than a Walmart. One of the most recent ones that we've talked about is April 20th, 2021, 29 Palms military sighting. Jeremy Corbell brought that one to light. Over 50 witnesses saw, guess what, a triangular UFO. Then we've got a couple of older ones, mass sightings. You go back to April 6, 1966, 200 kids at the Westall School in Australia saw what looked like a silver cigar-shaped flying saucer. And then the other one that's pretty famous today as well is the Ariel School in Zimbabwe, which took place September 16th, 1994, where 62 kids witnessed it. Now, we're always impressed when there's more than one witness. You know, Travis Walton, the Dutch, there were 6 other witnesses, and that's one of the reasons that we tend to give more credibility than if it's just a single person telling a story, if there's no corroboration for it. But when you have like 6 witnesses, but how many witnesses were there for the Phoenix Lights?
Okay. Can I say we're talking between 10 and 20,000, first of all, and there's so much mis and disinformation out there, Dale. Even that report, which is a wonderful show, I have to tell you. But number one, that was not my video. That was the Boomerang video. Okay. I actually shot, and that's what's really important here.
Was that Travel Channel, by the way? Was that the Travel Channel? Was that the Travel Channel, by the way?
That was Discovery Plus.
Discovery Plus. Okay. Yeah,
and there's a few others out there. If you go to the Phoenix Lights Network website on the homepage and the news page, you can see some recent ones with Unexplained, with William Shatner was great, and also History's Greatest Mysteries. Does a whole hour on the Phoenix Lights. It was excellent with Lawrence Fishburne. You can see little clips there. But at any rate, the important thing is there is so much mis and disinformation out there. And they said March 13th was the first. That's what I've been seeing. No. I've been seeing them since 1995, and that's what's really significant. But I'll get into that if you like, because I saw these up close and personal. I was starting to say the first picture on the photos page shows the topography and a view from it's part of the view because we have a really, really big view. And anything that pops up out there gets our attention. And number one, just to talk about the March 13th for a second, when thousands of people were outside looking skyward for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet purposely, they also caught a glimpse, and this is going to probably surprise you, Dale, from 1 to 8 mile wide, according to Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. I mean, so much has come out. That's why the book's in its first print. The original book is there. So I keep adding chapters as the story unfolds. And the story just keeps on unfolding and evolving. But at any rate, the point is that actually on March 13th, not only were people seeing these UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, 1 to 8 miles wide, but it wasn't 1 or 2 events, as you would hear in the media. Yes, those people were outside between 8 and 10 p.m. to take a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet. And they also got a glimpse of these massive UAP, UFOs, gliding silently at rooftop level.
Wow.
And then some people saw it take off at blink speed, without even dispersing the air. Other people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. And that's something that we might want to talk about for the 1995 close sighting, because while we were watching and photographing the close orbs right outside our bedroom window, the same exact phenomenon is in the same exact location. This is 35 millimeter. They're in the negative, in the same spot, which we'll get to, which is really important, over Class B restricted airspace at the Sky Harbor International Airport, disappearing when the close orbs were disappearing. So they were there for 2 years before. It wasn't just March 13th. That's number one. Number two, it wasn't just a couple hours. We're talking starting at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, daylight sightings of these phenomena reported in Arizona. There were Native Americans that were reporting them in New Mexico. 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California. The 10, 11 o'clock hour, there were 2 commercial airline pilots that were approaching Las Vegas that called into the tower, and it took one of them years to get a hold of me. She was so nervous to share her story. But they saw one of these craft, and it wasn't just lights, it was also craft covering Las Vegas. The sightings continued, incredible people reporting them, continued for hours after. In fact, at 3 a.m., those people, unless they've read my book or hear me talk, don't know this. At 3 a.m., we actually have a clip in our documentary, our award-winning documentary, of an alleged crew from Luke Air Force Base that called the UFO Reporting Center at 3 a.m. to report in great detail that jets were sent off from Luke Air Force Base to intercept one of these massive craft over a mile wide, right over Central 7th Avenue and Indian School. As they got close, the lights dimmed, and then the entire craft blinked out and disappeared. As he's put it, it freaked out one of the pilots that he helped out of his aircraft, and then Luke was on lockdown after that. And then the sightings continued. And by the way, there were civilians that not only saw jets sent off from Luke Air Force Base to intercept and get gun camera film, which I heard they did. I haven't seen it, but I heard they did. And then after it disappeared, there were other witnesses that saw the craft reappear and then continue on its way slowly past South Mountain, the airport South Mountain. But the sighting continued until 5:30 in the morning, when a Boeing crew was coming to the airport. The head of the Boeing crew shared with me, they witnessed one of these craft right over their tarmac. So number one, it wasn't just 1 or 2 hours, it was over a dozen hours. We're talking at least 4 states, and we're doing a scientific study. Anybody out there, please join us, that has seen something similar to the Phoenix Lights, or particularly on March 13th, 1997, because we're trying to quantitate the most credible data. And what we're finding is mind-boggling. I mean, it's really mind-boggling. But also there were reports in Texas, Utah, and Colorado of the same phenomena during the mass sighting. So this was extremely far-reaching, much more than the news has reported and the media has reported, and even ufologists, seasoned ufologists, don't know this data, but it's really important because there's a study. Go to the website Phoenix Lights Network. Go to the GAP page, GAP. This is also very important, Geospatial Animation Project. The investigators actually took hundreds of reports. You asked me how many. There were thousands, but they took hundreds and hundreds of reports over 12 years. 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. And when I saw the pictures of the different craft, I mean, it's mind-boggling. There were 10 different craft. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph and look different, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And ultimately, that's what the investigators, after 12 years, concluded, because there was so much going on. These orb formations and rock solid equidistant formations that people were seeing, either in V shape or triangle shape or boomerang shape, and actual craft. And also, just to add to your list of other mass sightings, but after thousands of people saw what I saw, I literally and figuratively pushed my professional medical career aside to try to find a logical explanation. And the more I looked, the more I found such credible data. A month before our mass sighting, February 19th, 1997, there was another mass sighting over St. Petersburg, Russia. I don't know if you knew that, Dale, but there not only is there a video that is identical to one of the craft. And that blew me away when I saw the illustrations beautifully done by Larry Lowe. And the investigation itself was done by Bill Hamilton and Mike Tanner. But one of the craft, it was like a V shape, but each light was 3 lights. And there was a civilian over in St. Petersburg, Russia, on February 19th, 1997, that actually took video of that same craft. It was there a month before ours. And there were air traffic controllers that also came forward to say that they saw it over their tarmac in St. Petersburg, Russia. And that's where this gets interesting, because not only did my husband and I, both witness and photograph these orbs in a pyramid formation, and I can get into detail if we have time, right outside our bedroom window, cloaking right in front of us. And I jumped outside on the balcony, and if you look at the pictures, I got the 2 orbs, the 2 lower orbs, and also one orb disappearing. I mean, it was cloaking, it was shrinking. I mean, it was hard, it's mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it. 2 years before the mass sighting, and if you look and study those pictures, the data speaks for itself. The same exact phenomena, with the distance and the same exact location disappearing, as I would also capture 2 months before the mass sighting. This is where it really gets interesting.
You want me to start showing those pictures? Let's go ahead and bring some of those up, so that this is what we were talking.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
View.
I mean,
that's your view right there. Just give people some kind of a perspective of what it looks like. And so the dates are
can we go back? Can we go back? Can we go back to that picture? Because it's really important to note a couple of things there. Because in science, we look for repeatability. And that's why I wanted to get this out in the open. Most anomalies can be explained. Only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. So I wanted to take this picture because it's time we get this out in the open. Address it, accept it, and study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but also move forward in our own evolution. And this picture itself is very poignant, because if you look at the bottom left, there's a car on the road. And I took that purposely because the lights reflect onto the road. Can you see that there?
Yep.
And which is very unlike the true unknowns, which do not reflect. The orbs that we saw outside our bedroom window, the light is self-contained. That's why I called them an orb. And it was a uniform amber color throughout. It didn't glare like every other light out there glares. So that's a car on the road. If you look to the right of the car, there's skylights in a house down the street from us, and which is significant. Again, in science, we look for repeatability. And if you look at my unique collection, and I continued to take them after the mass sighting as well, which are amazing pictures in and of themselves. If you look straight up, you'll see two mountain ranges. The one on the left is South Mountain. The one a few miles back is the Estrella Mountain Range, and they intersect right where those lights, if you just look straight up, that's where they intersect. And a very interesting little coincidence happened 6 months before the mass sighting, and which is significant. So I'm going to share it with you and your audience, because this is all part and parcel of the Phoenix Lights for centuries, actually. I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend, Gila, Gila Bend Indian Reservation. And Native American land there is very sacred land. And after, this was 6 months before the mass sighting, after, when I started looking at my pictures, not only consistently did these lights keep showing up there, I called the principal, and they don't talk to outsiders, but I helped him out. And I just said to him, did anybody call, or do you know anybody that happened to see strange lights on March 13th in that area? And he started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? You've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. I had no idea. I knew nothing about this topic at all. And not only does he say to me that that's how the Estrellas got its name. It means star in Spanish, gateway to the stars. And also mentioned that there are petroglyphs, drawings. This is 1997. There's artwork that's very similar to what we were seeing etched on the mountains there, and they believe that there's a portal or gateway in that area. And it was like, whoa, really? I had no idea. Once I started looking into that fascinating aspect, not only did they have a sighting the day before ours over the Navajo Nation, and I'm working with 2 Navajo Rangers the last few years that are law enforcement, that are actually studying these phenomena seriously. But the Hopi right here in Arizona have protocols to invite these phenomena in. They welcome them. That's what's really important about this. They actually believe that some of these orbs are either spirit world or ancestors coming to give them guidance and comfort, knowledge and inspiration. And, I have to admit, and I do get passionate, so I apologize if I get passionate about this, but it's exciting to hear that they feel that these things are really with them and here to share with and to help them, which is maybe something we should acknowledge. But at any rate, when you go to 2 months before the mass sighting, and I think you were going to show some of the pictures from 95.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we got those, kind of set the stage so that people would understand that we're not talking about an event that took place in one day over 8 hours in 4 states. This is something, and especially what you just told us, this is something that's been going on for a long, long time. But here's some other examples of the fact that, March 13th, 1997 was not the beginning and the only incident, that there are others. And so why don't you tell us about this one from February? I've got them by dates.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. Yeah. I mean, and you just said it. I mean, it's so frustrating when people just focus on March 13th. Oh, it was flares. Oh, it was, but I mean, there's so much more to this story. And that was one of the reasons I really needed to come forward to say, whoa, wake up. There's much more to this story that needs to be told, and people can decide for themselves. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just sharing the data. Decide for yourself. But this is pretty poignant, because when we were inside, okay, this is not a little coincidence. It happened to be the eve of my birthday, February 6th, 1995. And again, my husband and I had no interest or knowledge in this topic at all. He was on several state and hospital medical boards at the time, so nothing ever ruffled his feathers. And I was taking a leisurely bath in the next room, and one wall of our bedroom is a window. So if you're in the bedroom, anything that pops up out there, whether it's an haboob, the dust storms that we have here, or a fire or lights, they get your attention. And he was on the phone with my mother-in-law from Philadelphia to wish me a happy birthday. And suddenly he says, oh my God, what the hell is that? Get over here quick, which was very unlike him. And I grabbed my towel, wringing wet, go to the window, and both of us a little below us, because we're really high on the mountain. I have to describe this. We're really high on a mountain that surrounds the Valley of the Sun. There are mountain ranges around the Valley of the Sun. And we're kind of nestled in a mountain range, and it's gated, okay, and private. There is no way, and I mean zero way, this was military. Plus, it's dark, and suddenly I look, and there's 3 amber orbs, one on top and 2 very closely aligned underneath. And I always go back to this sighting because I saw this up close and personal. They were close, okay? They were less than 100 yards away. I mean, they were really close and a little below us. And it's a very private, gated area. It was totally dark underneath. I was trying to see if somebody was there, which they shouldn't be. Plus, it's very dangerous because there's a lot of cacti and snakes and all kinds of stuff there. And there was nothing. It was pitch black. And my first thought was to get my video camera, but I didn't want to miss anything. And I always really urge people to take a moment in certain times, and this was one of them, to really take a mental image of what's happening at that moment. And I did, because I didn't know how long it was going to last. And I'm sure there's people out there that have had experiences, and you're in such awe that you don't want to move. But I really try to take everything in: the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each. They were oval shape. I said afterwards they were like an egg on its side, but oval shape, which is interesting because the Navy Nimitz pilots have shared the video of the Tic Tac and say that what they were seeing was oval shape. Now, I don't know if they're connected in any way, but they were oval shape. There was a uniform amber color throughout. And again, I mentioned them as an orb because the light did not go outside the edge. It was very soothing amber color. Every other light out there glared. These did not. And I thought, you know what? It's so unusual. If I don't get a picture of this, nobody's going to believe it. I go running to the closet to grab my cheap Canon Instamatic camera, which I collect sunsets. And my husband calls me back. He says, get over here quick. One of them is disappearing. And as we both watch, and again, Dale, I always go back to this. I mean, it's so ingrained in my brain. The top orb, without budging from the other 2 underneath, very closely aligned, it was 3 separate objects, started to shrink very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligent presence behind it. And I mean, it was just mind-boggling till it was a pea size. I remember seeing that pea size and thinking, oh my God, what is that? And then it disappeared, but it felt like it was still there. Where did it go? So I stepped out on the balcony, got a quick picture of the 2 lower orbs, and you can see them on the lower left-hand side there, the 2 lower orbs. And what's interesting is that if you look at the arrow on the top, the same exact phenomenon. I didn't know this until 3 years after the mass sighting, when we analyzed, a year after the mass sighting, 3 years after this sighting, that they were there. The same exact phenomena. This has all been analyzed and studied by university and military optical experts.
Let me stop you for a second. I want to ask you a
Sure.
question just to see if it's similar to an experience I had. I saw an orb back in July. I got some pictures, but unfortunately my night vision was corrupted, and so the stills aren't very good. But it was really the first time I'd seen something like that, and it was pretty phenomenal. But I had an event happen, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago. I don't know if it was a helicopter or something else, but I mean, it went over my house at like 10 o'clock at night. It creeped over twice. I never could figure it out because I used to chain and chalk helicopters when I was in the Navy, so I've got a general idea of what they're supposed to sound like, and even took a ride on one of them, being on the flight crew. And this one was quieter. It was 10 o'clock at night, so there's no reason. It was creeping over my house. I don't remember any rotor watch, and so I'm not even 100% sure it was, because you talked about these things cloaking. People talk about them mimicking other things. But whether it was a helicopter or not, if it was, there's no question about it. It was some kind of new technology, like a stealth type helicopter. If it was, there was just so many things that were different about it. But the fact that it crept over my house not once but twice, that was more impactful on me because it was so close. It was like right there. I mean, the orb was cool, but this was surreal. And I don't know if that's how your event, where it was up close and personal with you versus seeing the lights further away. Can you kind of help me with that? Is that how it hit you, or was it different?
That's a great point. That's a great point, Dale, because if it was only the lights at a distance, as a healthy skeptic, I could feed into a logical explanation, even if it's not true. I could do that. But I saw these up close and personal. That's why it was so important to share this data, let it speak for itself, and let people know that there is much more to this story. And again, like you said, I mean, having seen something up close and actually cloak, and I didn't even know the word cloak, I have to tell you, because we had two boys that were young kids at the time. I mean, the only thing we ever watched was E.T. and Close Encounters and the wonderful messages from the original Star Trek series. And when the top orb started to shrink or whatever, I mean, like a dimmer switch. I mean, it's very hard to
I mean, if it was
even
cloaking, maybe
describe.
that's what it was doing.
I'll describe in logical terms. But what popped into my head was a Romulan cloaking device. It did pop in my head, which wavered before. Anybody that's watched Star Trek will know, before it disappeared. These did not. I noted that. But it felt like it was cloaking. And then after it disappeared, it felt like it was still there. Where did it go? Really important. Then, while I'm out on the balcony and my husband was inside, I was outside, I shot these two, and it felt like there was something watching me. And I did not share this with a soul until 2 years later, after the mass sighting with the investigators at Phillips Labs. And going through my mind at that moment, I thought, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. I mean, it really felt like something was watching me. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink. And again, these were really close. And I quickly shot a picture of that. Something just told me to take a picture, and I did. And miraculously, if you have that next, I hope, I actually caught one of the orbs. No, that's 2 years later, but that's okay.
These are the ones I
You can
have.
go back. No, go back to the first one. That was great. Yeah, that's great. Actually, I caught the left orb half disappeared, and anybody can go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website to take a peek at these. I caught the left bottom orb half disappeared and one still there, which was miraculous. I mean, that I even caught it on this cheap Instamatic, but it was the only picture that turned out at the time. And interestingly, in the background, the four lights that are pointing to right there turned into two lights. Okay. Which I had no idea that they were even there at the time. I was so focused on the closed orbs and wondered for 2 years. And by the way, the orbs moved also to the right side of those skylights there. So they moved, okay, to the right side, plus the lights in the distance disappeared. Real short, I'm just going to interject this. A year after the mass sighting, I contacted Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee. If you've ever heard, he's very well respected, because we had another sighting a year later through a fog, which we have some of that video of straight lines and mirror images. The final thing is a giant triangle in the same spot, like a pyramid. And four of us captured it in north, south, east, and west, which is also another little coincidence that the videos from March 13th are from videographers north, south, east, and west, but be that as it may. As an afterthought, I sent him that last picture. And he contacted me. He said, you said that close sighting in 95 was only a couple minutes. I said, right. He said, are you sure? I said, that's what I remember. He said, ask your husband. Now, interestingly, everybody comes from a different background, different upbringing, different belief system, worldview. He would get agitated when I brought it up. He didn't want to talk about it. And I told Bruce about that, Dr. Maccabee, and he said, well, you've got to corroborate that you saw the same thing. I sat him down. I said, look, we don't have to talk about 95, but how long do you remember that sighting being? He says, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. He said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He said, first of all, he was the first to notice that the same exact phenomena in the same exact location was there in 95 in the distance as we were looking at the closed orbs. But he said, That's not even the most profound, and the fact that they moved as well. But the skyline itself, and I want to make this really short because this 21-page report is on Phoenix Lights Network website if anybody cares to read it. Very meticulous. He said there's many groups of lights on in the first picture that are off. In the last picture, he says that doesn't happen in a couple minutes. He has me do an experiment to take the skyline once every hour, once every half hour to see when those groups of lights went out. Now, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8. So let's be conservative and say 8 o'clock. The lights started going out at 9 o'clock. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Oh
And
my
he wanted
goodness.
to present this case at the 1999 MUFON International Symposium in Washington, D.C., which he did as the only, as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. So tuck that away because I
So
didn't
you,
even tell anybody until the second edition of the book, just to have scientists take a look at it. I mean, maybe it shows that our concept of time is primitive, past, present, and future. Is linear time is primitive. And also, if there are other times and spaces along with ours, then why is it such a leap to think that there might be other intelligences, sentient entities in these other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? And I have to say, 2 years later, didn't see anything similar. And suddenly, three orbs at a distance appear January of 97. And I'm watching them, and they were huge balls of seemed like spinning energy. And I watched them as they seemed to implode from right to left. They were in a line formation. Wait a minute. Wait. And the next night, and I mentioned to my husband, and by the way, he says, "Do I still have to go to work tomorrow?" I mean, he didn't want to hear about it. And the next night, he was at a medical board meeting. And I come upstairs, and again, anything that pops up out there, we usually see, because the window perpendicular, the sliding glass window doors that are perpendicular to the big window, I noticed the same three orbs in an equidistant line were now far distant that seemed near the airport. And I thought, enough. I go run downstairs, I grab my video camera, I get outside, I got about 18 seconds worth, the battery goes dead. And I thought, oh geez, I go inside, about 8 o'clock, I go outside, they're gone. My husband comes up the drive, and this again is very, very important data that showed that these things were around for a while. I go outside. I said to my husband, remember I told you about the three lights far west last night? Well, about a half hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing like this, and I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there's red blinking lights on top of the mountain, and these were lower. I mean, this is alerting people because the airport is right there, that there's a mountain there, so the planes don't crash into the mountain. And as I'm pointing, the same three lights appear in the same spot. I thought, whoa, I got to get a picture of this. And luckily, my video camera was being charged. And because in video, it doesn't do it justice. In video, the lights are much smaller, they flicker, even though if you really study them, the formations themselves are very compelling. If you can go to the one before this one, as I'm ready to shoot the three, suddenly six pop up on top of the three. And that picture is also on the Phoenix Lights Network photo page that's wavy because I was shaking. Okay, it's wavy because I was shaking. Not having an explanation for 95. And this was massive. I mean, over a mile wide. It was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? But I kept my wits about me and kept clicking away. This picture, and I'm glad you have this one because this picture to me, Dale, is a smoking gun. Again, this is 2 months before the mass sighting, January of 97. I was capturing this, whatever it was, UAP, head on, okay? And here we see a light in the center with two on each side that are dimmer with what seems two underneath. Well, 2 months later, thousands of people during the mass sighting would describe what they were seeing as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing lights. Here we go. This is 2 months before the mass sighting. And as I'm shooting this, the bottom orbs start to disappear. And the top formation seemed to be turning into a V shape. And I think that's the next picture, which is terrific, because if you look at that picture, and again, these have all been analyzed, each one, if you can see, each one is bigger than the one in between there, which can be postulated that either these are lights that are attached to something, as air traffic controllers would say to me the morning after when I started calling around and found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport who saw the same thing at the same time I was shooting it over Class B restricted airspace. They were very forthcoming initially. And one of them was a meteorologist, which was significant because not only was he excited that I had called, and he was a really low-key guy. We met afterwards and had a briefing at Village Labs, which is in my book. But he said that this entire thing appeared over Class B restricted airspace. The three had appeared at 8 o'clock, which got him really nervous. I mean, there's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport. Anyone that comes into that radius, especially 1,000 feet altitude that these were, must call the tower, and no one did. So they looked on radar, and there was a whole group. They looked on radar, did not show up on radar. And he said when the 6 popped up, they really got nervous because it was right over the tarmac. They took their high-powered binoculars to look, and in his own words, he said there were 6 points of light totally equidistant from each other, massive span over a mile wide that seemed to be attached to something, or had a force field. They couldn't see what it was attached to, or had a force field holding them in rock solid, equidistant formation. And he said the entire thing, and he was a meteorologist and climatologist that taught at one of the colleges here as well, turned as a unit against the wind. Significant. Elevated slowly, and as he put it, moved in synchrony behind South Mountain, which is just south of the airport. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then he said, beats me. I said, you're an air traffic controller. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. He said they ruled out every conventional aircraft. This is a whole group. Aircraft, and these are professional skydivers, balloons, Chinese lanterns, flares, and even skydivers with lights. They could not find one thing that sounded logical or reasonable to what they had seen. We stayed in contact. I continued photographing these phenomena up, and there were others also that were seeing them and photographing them along with me as well, up into and including March 13th. Again, it was just another night for me, but thousands of people were outside purposely. And that happened again in 1991. You could add this to your list, in Mexico, when there was an eclipse and thousands of people were outside looking skyward, and suddenly there were dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of UFOs, UAP in the sky. So, it seems whoever did this wanted to be seen. And not only that, the other side of this, and as the story unfolded, it's fascinating because there was no investigation, no explanation for months. But I do have to say here, for March 13th, very significant as well, is that we are so inundated with threat, and harm from movies and the media. There is not one report, credible report of harm, threat, or abduction, or missing persons, which some movie did on a take on the Phoenix Lights, which is totally fictitious. Not one report, credible report. It was just the opposite. People were in awe and in wonder, curious. Hundreds of cars pulled over to see this amazing sight. I still have people tell me that they feel blessed to have had the experience, the Phoenix Lights mass sighting experience. And that doesn't happen with flares or helicopters or conventional aircraft. And we're also finding out, and again, we're doing a study. If you go on the Phoenix Lights Network website, the landing page has a triangle, and underneath you can either enter the website, which I hope people will do and explore and consider what's on there. There's tons. But underneath that is our study questionnaire, totally anonymous, totally confidential. We want people to tell the truth. And what we're finding, and we have over 1,000 people worldwide, participants that have seen similar phenomena. And especially if you saw something on March 13th, please join us. And the findings are incredible. I mean, not only, and we don't have time to really get into it today, but Kurt Russell was one of the people, not only that didn't acknowledge it for 2 years. He didn't say a word. He was flying into Sky Harbor. And that's how the story unfolded. I mean, not only was there no investigation, no explanation, but in May, the councilwoman, Frances Emma Barwood, she was also vice mayor of Phoenix, innocently, because she got over 1,000 calls from her constituents. She was just doing her job. She didn't see it. Asked for an investigation, and she was just plastered by the media. I mean, they made cartoons and made fun of her. I mean, anybody that came forward in that time in 97, there was so much ridicule and snickering and discrediting. I was very happy to keep anonymous, and I really did keep anonymous for 7 years. But as the story unfolded, June 18th, this is the tip of the iceberg. There was a front page USA Today article. For the first time, people outside of Arizona were hearing about the lights over Phoenix. And we didn't have social media at the time. Overnight, it went viral. Not only did every morning show, national morning show, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather were reporting on this, but we were deluged by media from all over the world. And once they started talking to the witnesses, their stories were so heartfelt and so detailed that they too were asking for an investigation, we're asking for an explanation. And suddenly after nothing, okay, and the morning after, we get an announcement that then Governor Symington was going to hold an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to divulge the lights over Phoenix, and everybody took it seriously. Let me just show you the boomerang. Okay, the boomerang. There were two boomerangs. Then I'm sorry to get off the track, but since you're showing this, there were two boomerangs that were shot after 10 o'clock when they supposedly sent off flares. I'll get to that in a second. And they've been under fire for that ever since that announcement came out. This arrowhead and my video of 3 end lights of a mile-wide VR triangle were shot before 10 o'clock. Okay, so you have to take, and there's a whole story to that. That they were different formations. I mean, they very well could have been different, as I said, a parade of different.
Well, the other thing is they didn't do it over 4 states over 8 hours either. I mean,
at least 4 states, exactly. At least 4 states,
yeah.
over a dozen hours. But anyway, getting back to the story as it unfolded, the next day, this governor holds this unscheduled press conference, and people took it seriously. And he comes marching out, one of his aides, with a giant alien head costume, and made a mockery of it, which was not funny for the people that actually saw the Phoenix lights. In fact, there you go. He even mentioned, he didn't want people to panic. Well, people weren't panicked, I'm sure, at that point, because it was out of Pandora's box all over the world from the USA Today article. Probably the military and government were panicking because they didn't know what to do at that point. And after that, I called every military base to find out what they knew. And what was interesting, and I have some of the conversations which are quite comical in my book, they were just as curious. They had no idea. They were asking to meet with me so they could see what I have, which I didn't want anything to do with the military. And it was amazing that they themselves didn't know what was going on. I get a call from about a month later, July 24th, from one of the heads of PR from the Air National Guard. And she said, "Oh, Dr. Lynn, I think we know what those lights were back in March." And I was thrilled. I was looking for anything that was logical. And she says, "Do you believe in all these months, nobody ever looked at the Air National Guard and nobody ever looked at the log for Air National Guard visiting, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird," which I later found out in military terms, and you probably know this, means diversionary tactical maneuvers. So they may have been sending, flares off to attract attention away from the true unknowns. That certainly isn't what thousands of people saw right over their heads. Okay. Right. And she says that might be what some people saw. So I said, wait a minute, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town. She says March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, my husband and I did see something similar. In fact, not only did I get pictures of it, but air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport, who I talked with the morning after the January sighting and after the mass sighting, confirmed that they were over Class B restricted airspace, about 1,000 feet altitude. And she says, you never told me that, because I never described any of the details. And I said, besides, and by then I had educated myself to anything logical, including military illumination flares. You're trying to tell me that flares that are dropped from aircraft on a parachute and drift haphazardly downward with the wind have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself. Not one person mentioned that fact, and are meant to illuminate the area around it. So heat-seeking missiles will go there instead of aircraft. Traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistantly spaced, mile-wide V for hours. And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, I'm still waiting, Dale.
Yeah.
27 years later. And anyway, that kind of, it was like, well, what is going on here? Then, and I'm going to run through this really quickly. Then, 3 years later, Francis Barwood was running for Secretary of State. Again, people don't know this happened because it was very, very quick and didn't really get outside of Phoenix. But if you look on the news page on the Phoenix Lights Network website and scroll down a little bit, you'll see a block that says AZ Family. So you can see it for yourself and decide. We get an announcement because she was running for Secretary of State to get answers for the lights over Phoenix and asking for a reenactment, which was brilliant because, hey, if it's military, I'm a show me person. Show me, do it again. Now, shame on you for going right over people's heads and denying it for so long, but do it again. 3 Air National Guards, we get an announcement right before the 3rd anniversary, coming into town to show everyone the Phoenix lights. They must have been practicing for weeks. And I have to tell you, that really put the nail in the coffin. Not only did they try to make a triangle, it was upside down, it fell apart immediately. One of the lights just fizzles out, and they were descending. I mean, just what flares do. To this day, the Phoenix lights have never been reenacted or explained, but they continue to appear. And if we fast forward again, right after the 10th anniversary, our former Governor Fife Symington, who mocked the sighting in 97, for whatever reason, bravely came forward to say that he actually witnessed one of these mile-wide craft. And he was an awarded military pilot. And in his own words, he said, not only was it definitely not flares, it was a craft. And we're talking gunmetal bottoms, windows that people saw, even beings at the windows, but it definitely wasn't flares. And the word he used is what other countries who are much more open to these phenomena, including France and UK and Belgium, use the word otherworldly, okay, which is pretty poignant. And then we fast forward. Now, interestingly, the morning after the mass sighting, when I called the air traffic controllers, he also mentioned that 2 pilots called in, a commercial airline pilot called into the tower who was on departure. It said, what the hell are these lights over me? Now, we're talking right over the tarmac. And a private pilot called in, never said who it was. But right after the 10th anniversary, that private pilot finally came forward. And it was none other than, wonderful actor Kurt Russell, who, by the way, was reporting it to air traffic control while I was filming it, which is pretty cool. Oh. And he was flying into Sky Harbor with his adopted son, Oliver, who noticed it first, which is interesting. Now, he was more of an adult, but children were the first to see these V's coming towards them. And as I said, we're so inundated with fear and so forth, jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it got close, a calmness came over everyone, a connectiveness to the phenomena that after it passed, they wanted to chase after it and, have their parents get in cars and drive after it. So we're seeing in real time, not only a change, a transformation, a positive transformation. That's what we're studying in our big scientific experiencer study, Phoenix Lights experiencer study, is in real time. There was a transformation, a positive transformation. Some people got telepathic messages, not to be afraid, that they weren't here to harm us. And in long term, people not only changed their eating habits, and a lot of people wouldn't eat meat anymore for whatever reason, but also people went into the peace movement, to the environmental movement, and that's what we're studying. And the findings are riveting because it's confirming that whoever is behind the Phoenix Lights, and I have no idea. I have no idea who is behind it. That's why I said it's time we get this out in the open and address it and accept it and study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution, because something is trying to wake us up, not only to their presence in a very gentle, non-threatening way. That's important to note here. Can't speak for other things, but I can for the Phoenix Lights, but also wake us up, because there were to the spiritual beings that we are, and that's part of it. It's not woo-woo. Okay, people are transformed. I mean, we're documenting it for real. Plus the fact that there were a number of witnesses, and I'll make this quick. Maybe we can come back another time and discuss it, because there were another number of witnesses who had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that really hit me hard, because I did too. We won't have time to get into it, but I lay it all out there in the book. And the point was, and again, it's not about me, it's about the data. When I learned this, I thought, whoa, could there be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's unexplained aerial phenomena or out-of-body experience or near-death experience that has a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, just like the UFO topic, there's very credible, and at the time I looked for the most credible data out there. There's also university data that confirms that there is a connection. The Omega Project by Dr. Kenneth Ring is about this thick, as well as Dr. John Mack at Harvard. All were concluding that there's a connection. I lay it out very simply in the book. Half the book is about this. Not only in the experience itself, when you really look at the data, very similar experiences, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body, or unexplained aerial phenomena, contact, or whatever, but the after effect, the awakening, the enlightenment, the connectedness that one feels to the universe, to the earth, to each other, that person may never have felt before. It's really transformative. That's why I call all unexplained phenomena an up, because it's a positive transformation. And I'll just leave you with this. The message across the board that people are getting is to wake up to what we're doing to ourselves and our planet before it's too late. And if that's not a message to relay, I don't know what is, because hopefully, because we have such goodness, we have so much more potential than we're being told as human beings to make this a better world. And that was one of the reasons that I came forward to get the information out there as a scientist, as credibly as I can, as a physician, to let people know they're not alone. Not only is it important, even though most anomalies can be explained, when someone has a paranormal experience, it's real to them. And if they don't share it, it festers. And just sharing with one person. And I always say, go on Facebook, Phoenix Lights Network page, Phoenix Lights group page, share with one person or with me personally through the website. It's healing. It's cathartic. And certainly as an experiencer, I know how that feels. Okay. And as an educator, ultimately, the data is there. I mean, it's a choice whether you want to look at it and learn and grow. But it is there now, and I hope that people will check out the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, and our documentary, which they're all on Amazon. It's streaming on Amazon, and it's also free. Our award-winning documentary, we're so proud, it's a real grassroots effort, is free on Tubi, and it's a number of other places as well. And also the latest thing that I've done is for parents and teachers and grandparents to do along with their children and grandchildren and themselves, a graphic novel activities coloring book, 160 pages of amazing crop circles and the 10 different crafts to scale to color, and the story of the Phoenix Lights as it unfolds. There you go. The adventures, the Phoenix Lights, UFOs, and crop circles, Adventures of Sue FO Field Observer and Hugh FO. He's a little alien. And we had classes at school, 5th and 6th graders working with us to get the most enjoyable activities. We have activities in there, 80 crop circles to color, and also talk about the real versus the fake crop circles, as well as the 10 different crafts to scale. We have a map maker that came to Phoenix. I worked with a Disney illustrator. Wonderful, wonderful people that contributed to this to get something out there for everyone. And in the classroom, which was terrific. And, I hope people will take a look at them.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about. You obviously know Britt Elders. She's the one who referred me to you as well, and I appreciate it. But we had a similar conversation, and that, she talked about vibration levels, raising our vibration levels, and I pretty much broke it down, and I'll do the same thing with yours, is that, they want us to be better human beings, is what it comes down to. Better human beings, treat each other better, treat our environment better, take care of our planet and stuff like that. But one thing I would be remiss if we didn't bring up, and this is definitely there is a connection to what you're saying with a lot of people, but there are other people who've had experiences that aren't necessarily positive, and there's there could be multiple reasons for that. So I don't want to paint the picture like every encounter is nice, because there are some that are not. And my own opinion on it is that there are different species, and some of them are just amazing and they want what's best for us, and I really believe they're the ones who are in control, because if they weren't, I don't think we'd be here. I don't think our world would look anything like it is now. And so I do believe that there is somebody protecting us as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that that we're balanced on that, so we don't just paint it all one way, because then we're denying some other people's experiences. And I've got friends who've had negative ones.
Well, that's why I mentioned that I can only reference the Phoenix Lights experience and what I've documented with the Phoenix Lights. And now for over, 3 decades, you're documenting these things, and also hearing from hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people. And, I just document the facts. If there was anything out there that was contrary to what I shared with you, I would share that too. And yes, I do believe that there are other energies out there. I've seen it in medicine. There's negative and positive energies out there. Okay, we're talking about frequencies, energies, that I've seen it in medicine. People that have negative vibes and just negative thoughts. I mean, they bring that negativity to them. And if you notice, when something happens, and really note this the next time that something happens that might be bothering you or whatever, and you're anxious. I mean, the energies, these negative energies, just suck in. And it also affects your mind and your body. And the same thing is true of positive energies. I've seen just a positive energies and a positive person heal themselves. I mean, I've seen this up close and personal as well. So we're talking about other frequencies, other energies out there. Like I mentioned before too, if there's other times and spaces out there, as we have quantum physics and quantum mechanics telling us that with string theory and bubble theory that there's 10 or 11 different dimensions out there. Well, if that's true, then why is it such a leap to think that there could be other entities, other sentient, intelligent entities, whether negative or positive, in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of or invited. And I invite others to think positively, because that'll bring the positive to you as well. I've seen it over and over again in my own life. I mean, we could talk for hours about the different coincidences that even during my near-death experience, and I'll share this with you now, and I just started sharing it with people. If they read the book, they would know. But the fact is that I was 8 years old, and I was in a dentist's office getting ether, which is very, very dangerous. And this was in 1956. And I had a real near-death experience and actually saw three giant beings above the earth in glowing white robes with hoods over their heads. And I tried to see their faces, but I couldn't see their faces. But I felt their unconditional love for me. They knew who I was. And I can't get into much detail, but it was a life-changing experience when I was little. And I thought everybody knew the secret, and everybody was psychic and empathic. When I came back, I mean, I just way beyond my years, but I didn't realize it then. But I have felt that those beings have been with me ever since. And until the Phoenix Lights, I thought they were spirit world. Now I don't know who they were, to be honest with you. But none the fact that I have trusted in their guidance. And if you read my book, you'll see certain things that have come to be with that trust. And I'm along for the ride. I surrendered to this. And if I'm really supposed to do something to help, if I can be a credible voice so that people actually look at the data, then I've done my job. And I appreciate you letting me share today. And,
And,
I
and
hope people take heart and actually look at the data, because it's quite riveting and opens people up. Even if you haven't had an experience, an up experience, unexplained phenomena experience, you don't need to have an experience to have that positive transformation. Just open your mind and your heart and learn about it. And you'll start noticing other serendipities in your life. And also, positive thinking is so important for your mind and your body.
I think one thing that I heard you say, and I think it's important, you talked about, the Hellbot comet. I remember that was the year I graduated from college. And then you talked about the eclipse in Mexico. People saw things, maybe not so much because, which could be either way. They came because they knew people would be looking up. But the other possibility is maybe we just don't look up enough. And I said this in a post recently, with all of our problems down here on Earth, sometimes we forget to look up, and all we can see is what we have. Before we close this out, I want to go ahead and promote your books real quick so everybody has an idea. I appreciated all the information you gave us, especially when I didn't know about them trying to recreate it 3 years later, the 3rd-year
Years later.
anniversary. Yeah, see, that needs to be brought up as well, because the Flair story is a joke. And one thing I've noticed is that, whether you're talking Roswell, no matter which event you're talking about, there's a consistency on the side of the military, and that is they will explain it away with balloons, with swamp gas, with flares, with glare off of jets. I mean, anything but what you actually saw. And so you have to ask yourself, why does the military always have an answer? And it's never what people say it is.
Exactly. And one other little point. Again, I just gave you the tippy tip of the iceberg and how the story unfolded. In May, right before Francis Barwood came, asked for an investigation at the council meeting, and I didn't know this for years. I was handed a FOIA report by John Greenwald. I don't know if you know him from the Black Vault. He would be a great guest for you as well, who at 16, actually started 15, started this Black Vault to get FOIA reports for different UFO sightings. And he actually sent one to Luke Air Force Base and got a response in May 1st in 97. And I don't have it in front of me, but essentially it said that the Luke had nothing to do with the lights. And by then there were detractors. There were already debunkers coming out in mass to say it was holograms. It was one kid that called Francis Barwood out of over 1,000 said that he saw planes, and of course that's what the media picked up on, as well as the flare thing. And the point is that they said that they don't know where the flare explanation came. This is in the FOIA report. They don't know where the flare explanation came up with, but it definitely wasn't them doing flares. I mean, this is, here we go. Then after the USA Today article comes out, they come forward, and David Monson. I mean, you'll see in my book, they kept changing their stories. Luke says they were sending off flares. David Monson says they were down in Tucson, we're sending off flares. That's what people saw. whatever. I mean, the point is that there is so much more to the story, and I really am grateful that you let me share some of the highlights for you. But in the book, this is the 4th edition of the book, because they asked me to do another book as things started unfolding. I said, no, 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 no. This was a 750-page journal that I squeezed the best, the most credible data to the original book of 230 pages. That's still there. But I continued with other chapters as the story unfolded, so people could see how the story uniquely and it's fascinating to see how it really unfolded. Our documentary, there's no more DVDs available except through our website, Phoenix Lights Network website. And yes, we won over a dozen international film festival awards. We're so proud. I mean, it's a real grassroots effort, but it's poignant because you're hearing it from the witnesses themselves. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell is in it. He was actually being conferred with while it was happening. And in the bonus features of the DVD, he talks about the cover-up, the UFO cover-up. I don't go there. I'm working at a grassroots effort, and that's where I'm staying. The military has a job to do, but he does talk about the cover-up, and we also have the coincidences that happened on March 13th, 1997. Do I have a quick minute to share that?
Go ahead.
Number one, there was a satellite that was made in Chandler, Arizona, that they called Village Labs to tell them about this firsthand, that the satellite was supposed to detect incoming missiles when dead that night, March 13th, 1997. There was an article a few months later in August of 1997 that was in the Scientific America of strange gamma rays coming into our atmosphere. Didn't talk about the Phoenix Lights, but talked about these strange gamma rays that were coming into our atmosphere on March 13th, 1997. Also on March 13th, 1997, Bill Clinton, who was at golfer Greg Norman's house in Florida, was rushed out to an undisclosed location. Later, they said that he broke his knee, but there's not one picture. I looked, not one picture of his knee. But be that as it may, he was rushed out that night on March 13th. And I can't confirm this, but I did hear from insiders that we went to DEFCON 3 that night. And anyway, we have that little segment in the bonus features, as well as a 93-year young French pilot. He is amazing, who saw the Foo Fighters. There's a vast history of this from human documentation began, and Sumerian writings, and India writings, and certainly the Bible with Ezekiel Wheel, and on and on. And we could talk about that for another hour. But the Foo Fighters during World War II, Dr. Richard Haynes, who started NORCAP for reporting of pilots, thousands of pilot sightings of these things, looked at my data, looked at my pictures of these oars, and he said it's the exact same thing as the Foo Fighters. And he actually saw them and reported them when he was a pilot in World War II. And that story is really intriguing. So anyway, there's a lot more to the story, the documentary, as well as the bonus features, and then of course the graphic novel activities coloring book for all ages.
What about this? Is this the same book or a new separate book?
Well, that we actually also, that's the documentary cover. And that's
okay.
also evolved. The first, you showed the one with the awards on it. That was the original cover, and then we updated it with astronaut Edgar Mitchell, a 911 Phoenix police operator, a pilot that saw the Phoenix Lights, that also worked with flares, and he's in the bonus features as well. And then here is our graphic novel activities coloring book.
So you got a movie, you got a book, you got a documentary, and you got a coloring book. So everyone, you want to know more about the Phoenix Lights and go a little bit deeper into this issue. And Dr. Lynn, you've given us a lot today, but obviously there's more in your books that people could get. So and I'm very big on supporting people that are like Darcy Weir and James Fox and people that are actually, making documentaries, that are writing books to support from within the community and stuff. So I really encourage everyone to go ahead and buy the book, buy the movie, the documentary, buy the coloring book for your kids. I just say this is kind of my last little thing. The stigma that started after the closing of Project Blue Book still bothers me today. It is denial and ridicule. And unfortunately, that's why we cannot have the ridicule part. That's why we can't have an open dialogue. That's why people want to shut down and not talk about it, because it isn't that they can't handle it. It's just they've been told their whole lives that it's a joke, and if you talk about it, then there's something wrong with you. And so I'm hoping that's beginning to change, and that's why I do what I do, is to try to get the subject out there for everyone to be able to know about and understand that it isn't woo. It isn't, not that woo's necessarily bad, but it isn't way out there. It's right here and stuff. But
and all around us, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so once again, Dr. Lynn, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, and we'll have to have you back on again. Anyway, you have a great day. And to everyone else, I want to just remind you to go ahead and subscribe, hit the share and like buttons, and help this channel grow. Appreciate it. Everyone, have a good day. Keep looking up. That's a good point. That's exactly.
I've been saying that for years. In fact, in the last page in the activities graphic novel coloring book is keep looking up.
The odds are, if you look up and you keep looking up, eventually you're going to see something, because there's a lot going on. Anyway, everyone have a great day. You take care. Bye.